A German shepherd had been beaten so brutally she lost her sight, left for dead, until a soldier rescued her and her newborn pups. She was once a proud, trained dog, bred to serve and protect, but after being thrown away like trash, she endured the unimaginable, beaten, starved, and abandoned, left to die, blind and broken. All she had left were her tiny puppies and an unshakable instinct to defend them at any cost. Everyone had given up on her, except for one man. When a battle-scarred soldier found this helpless mother and her litter, something inside him shifted. In her pain, he saw a reflection of his own. What follows is a story you will never forget, a journey of survival, redemption, and the healing power of love between a man and a dog who had both lost everything. Before we continue, please remember to support stories like these, stories that celebrate courage, loyalty, and the beauty of second chances. The sun was setting on the outskirts of a small town in rural Minas Gerais. Dust kicked up as a pickup truck rumbled down a deserted dirt road, its engine groaning as if protesting every turn of its wheels. In the back of the truck, a cage was wedged between rusty tools and a cracked water bottle. It was not empty. Huddled in the corner was a German shepherd. Her coat, once a handsome tapestry of black and tan, was now a matted mess of filth and dried blood. Her breathing was shallow, each inhale a struggle. She didn't lift her head when the truck shuddered to a stop, nor did she stir when the engine fell silent. She simply had no strength left. Her name had once been Estrella, a name spoken with pride by the officer who had trained her. She had served as a K-9 on military bases abroad, sniffing out danger and protecting lives. But when her handler was killed in action, Estrella was discharged, deemed unfit for service. She passed through 2 shelters before being adopted by a man who saw her only as a tool. When she didn't obey quickly enough, she was punished. When she tried to protect her newborn pups, she was beaten more severely. Until, finally, she lost her sight, not to age or disease, but because the blows had extinguished the light from her eyes. Now she lay motionless, 4 tiny pups nestled against her, their whimpers a blind chorus to the cruelty of the world they'd been born into. Estrella didn't know how much longer she could keep them warm, or where they were being taken. She knew only pain, silence, and darkness. Miles away, Sergeant Rafael Silva sat alone on the porch of his modest cabin, deep in the Minas countryside. It had been 5 months since his last tour, and the dust still clung to his boots. His right leg ached from shrapnel that had never quite healed right. But the silence was the worst part, a silence that echoed louder than any explosion. After 3 tours, after losing friends and pieces of himself, the military had been his purpose, his anchor. Now, back home, the world felt hollow. He had come to the cabin to escape the city's chaos, the hollow smiles and empty nods of gratitude that meant nothing. Running a hand through his short-cropped hair, he stared out at the tree line. Something felt wrong, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Back on the dirt road, the pickup had stopped in a clearing littered with old farm equipment and broken machinery. The driver, a heavy-set man with tobacco-stained teeth, slammed open the tailgate and dragged the cage to the ground. Estrella's body jolted with the impact. One of the pups let out a faint cry and the man spat. "Useless dog, not even worth a bullet." He turned and stomped toward a shed, grabbing a shovel hanging on the wall. In that moment, Estrella moved. Blind, weak, and bleeding, she dragged her frail body toward her pups, baring her teeth into the darkness. She couldn't see the threat, but she could feel it. And though her body was failing, her instinct never would. The man returned, shovel in hand. Time to end this. He chanted. But before he could swing, a voice cut through the air. From the edge of the trees it said, "Hey, put down the shovel." The man froze. Raphael stepped silently into the clearing, his combat boots making no sound on the dry leaves. His eyes scanned the scene. The broken dog, the blood staining the dirt, the 4 trembling puppies, and the man poised to strike. "What are you doing?" Raphael asked, his voice calm and steady. "None of your business," the man grumbled. "Just taking care of a problem." Slowly, Raphael reached for the firearm holstered under his jacket. "Step away from the cage," he commanded. "Now, or the next thing you bury won't be a dog." For a long moment, the man stared at Raphael. Then, with a metallic clang, he dropped the shovel, muttered a curse, and scrambled away into the woods. Raphael waited until he was gone before kneeling beside the cage. "Hey there, girl," he whispered softly. "It's okay now. You're safe." Estrella didn't react at first. She couldn't see the man approaching, couldn't know if this voice was as cruel as the others or something different. But when Raphael gently touched her paw, she didn't snarl. She only trembled. One of the pups let out a whimper, trying to climb over her. Raphael's heart constricted. "You've been through hell, haven't you?" he murmured. He didn't yet know how deep her scars ran, or that this broken dog would change his life forever. But he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't leaving her behind. Raphael remained silent for a long moment, watching the shattered mother and her pups. The night air settled around them like a heavy blanket, filled with the soft cries of the puppies and the groaning of the trees. Estrella was still. Her breaths were shallow, rattling in her chest. The cage smelled of decay, old blood, and fear. Without hesitating, Raphael took out a knife and sliced through the rusted latch. The door creaked open, and as his hand reached inside, Estrella flinched. Her ears flattened, her teeth barely showing. Though blind, she could still sense the world, still feel the danger and cruelty that had defined her existence. "I'm not going to hurt you," Raphael whispered, keeping his voice low and steady. "I promise. I'm here to help." Carefully, he slid his arms around her fragile body. Her bones felt like twisted branches beneath his hands. Her fur was matted, and he could feel the landscape of scars beneath the tangled mess. Her head rested against his chest, not out of trust, but out of sheer exhaustion. Gently, Raphael lifted her from the cage and then reached back for the puppies. They were so small, barely the size of his palm, their eyes still sealed shut, their soft mews stirring something deep inside him. He carried them all to his truck, laying Estrella on a folded blanket in the back seat. He lined a cardboard box with an old sweatshirt and placed the pups inside, setting it beside her so she could feel their warmth. She nudged them tentatively, her nose brushing against their tiny, warm bodies. As he drove away, Raphael glanced in the rearview mirror. Estrella didn't move. She just lay there, guarding her pups with the last ounce of strength she had. Gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white, he muttered, "None of you deserved this." The drive back to his cabin felt longer than usual. The weight in his truck wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Memories flooded his mind. The night his unit was ambushed, the deafening blast, the blood, the silence that followed, and the image of his best friend. lying still beside him. His friend had owned a dog, Rex, a stubborn, resilient German shepherd who never left his side. Rex had pulled him from the rubble, dragged him through enemy fire, saved his life, and then, in the chaos, vanished. Rafael had never found him. But now, in the back of his truck, was another shepherd, a mother who had fought against all odds to keep her own family alive. He couldn't explain it, but it felt like a circle closing. When he reached the cabin, the porch light flickered on. Rafael got out, carefully opened the back door, and lifted Estrella again. "You're home now," he murmured. He carried her inside, straight to the warm living room, where the fireplace still held glowing embers. He laid her on a thick blanket and set the puppies beside her. She let out a low, hoarse whine. Rafael hurried to the kitchen, grabbed a bowl, and filled it with warm water. He held it to her muzzle. Estrella sniffed, then tentatively lapped at it. It was the first thing she'd accepted. "Good girl," he said, his voice soft. He then filled another bowl with shredded chicken from his fridge. At first, she wouldn't touch it. But when one of the puppies stirred, she slowly nudged the food toward herself and began to eat, each small bite a painful effort. Rafael knelt beside her, watching her every move. "You're a fighter," he whispered. But the truth was, she was running out of time. He could see it in the way she moved, each gesture deliberate, exhausted. Her wounds were infected. She needed a vet now. Rafael stood, grabbing his keys and his jacket. "I'll be right back," he said, as if pleading with her to hold on. He ran to his truck and sped off toward the only 24-hour clinic in the area, a 45-minute drive away. Back in the cabin, the fire crackled. Estrella lay still, her head near her pups, her ears twitching at every sound, her unseen gaze a protective shield around her young. Outside, someone was watching. Just beyond the tree line, a set of headlights flashed once before going dark. The man with the shovel hadn't gone far, and he wasn't finished yet. The old pickup tore down the dark highway, its headlights cutting through the fog. Rafael gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. He felt as if his own life depended on this drive, but it wasn't his life. It was hers. Estrella lay in the back, her breathing ragged, her muzzle trembling with every bump in the road. The puppies were safe in their box, huddled on the blanket, their tiny bodies a single mass of warmth. Rafael kept glancing in the mirror, his heart pounding. He had seen death on the battlefield, seen it in the eyes of fallen comrades. But this felt different. This was personal. Soon, the clinic came into view, a low white building on the edge of town, a single red neon sign glowing, "Emergency Animal Clinic." He skidded to a stop in the gravel lot, threw the truck in park, and rushed to the back. "I've got you," he whispered, lifting Estrella carefully into his arms. Her body was limp, but her ears flickered at the sound of his voice. She was still fighting. The clinic doors flew open as Rafael burst inside. "I need help, now," he yelled. "She's in bad shape, blind, bleeding, and she just had puppies." A young veterinarian rushed from behind the counter. "In here, quickly!" They laid Estrella on an examination table while an assistant took the puppies to an incubator. Rafael stood frozen, helpless, as the vet worked, her hands moving over Estrella's broken body, assessing wounds both old and new. "She's severely malnourished," the doctor murmured, shining a light into Estrella's blank, clouded eyes. "And these cataracts, they're from trauma. Someone did this to her." Rafael's jaw tightened. "I know who." The vet looked up, her expression grim. She's fading fast. She needs fluids, antibiotics, and we have to clean these wounds. Even if we stabilize her, she may never see again. Rafael nodded slowly. Do whatever you can. She's been through too much to lose her now. The doctor turned back to her work, and Rafael went to stand by the puppies. Their eyes were still sealed shut as they squirmed in the incubator, instinctively moving toward one another. One of them reached out a tiny paw and rested it on his wrist. He felt a surge of warmth, of life, of purpose, a feeling he hadn't known in a very long time. 45 minutes passed in a blur. Finally, the vet reappeared. She's stable, she explained. We've stopped the bleeding, cleaned her wounds, and she's on an IV. But she's going to need long-term care. This will be a slow recovery. I'll take care of her, Rafael said, his voice firm. She's not going back to where I found her. The vet hesitated for a moment, and in that silence Rafael looked at Estrella, his gaze hardening as if staring down the man who had hurt her. He made a silent promise. He will not touch you again. As dawn broke over the horizon, Rafael loaded Estrella and her pups back into his truck. She was still weak, but her breathing had evened out. She was alive. Her head rested gently on the edge of the seat, the puppies curled against her belly. The drive back was calm and quiet, but at the cabin, that peace was about to be broken. Unbeknownst to Rafael, the man with the shovel had returned during the night. His grimy pickup truck was parked just beyond the trees, hidden behind a fallen oak. He watched, waiting. A cigarette dangled from his lips as he peered through binoculars at the deserted cabin. Seeing the truck arrive in the dawn light, he crushed the cigarette under his boot and melted back into the shadows. Inside, Rafael carried her to a cozy corner near the fireplace. He gently laid her down, placing the box with the puppies beside her. Her ears twitched as one of the pups whimpered and nuzzled closer. Even without sight, she could feel their presence. She knew she was safe. Rafael knelt beside her, running a warm, damp towel gently through her fur. You made it, girl. You're safe now. She let out a ragged sigh, a sound of pure trust. But outside, behind the cabin, a pair of muddy boots drew closer, one cautious step at a time. The threat was not over. The cabin was quiet, save for the crackle of the hearth and the soft suckling sounds of the feeding puppies. Rafael stood in the kitchen, pouring hot coffee into a battered metal mug. He hadn't truly slept. His body was exhausted, but his mind was running on the adrenaline and instinct the army had taught him, fused with the memory of that man. The blazing eyes, the shovel held like a weapon. He knew men like that. Men who didn't mind causing pain, whether to animals or people. And this one didn't seem the type to leave quietly. Taking a sip of coffee, Rafael glanced into the living room. The dog was curled on the blanket, her head protectively shielding her pups. Even with her clouded eyes, she reacted to every sound, ever alert. Though blind, she was far from helpless, and Rafael was beginning to realize her strength ran deeper than he could have imagined. Sitting on the floor beside her, he gently scratched behind her ears. You've still got fight in you, he murmured. So do I. Outside, the first rays of morning pierced through the pines, but something was moving between the trees. Boots crushed dry leaves and twigs. A shadow slipped past the tool shed. The man was back. He moved slowly, deliberately, wearing a ragged sweatshirt and now carrying a crowbar. His eyes scanned the back of the cabin, his lips curling into a malicious smirk. This time he wasn't just here to finish off a dog. He was angry, embarrassed, and men like him never forgot a humiliation. He approached a side window, crouching low to stay out of sight. Through the glass, he could just make out the shape of the dog by the fire and the soldier nearby. Suddenly, she stirred. Her body tensed, her ears swiveling toward the window. A low, deep growl rumbled in her chest, a clear warning that something was wrong. Raphael looked at her. "What is it, girl?" She growled again, louder this time. His own senses immediately sharpened. She hadn't made a sound like that since the night he'd found her. It was raw, primal. Raphael grabbed a flashlight and moved toward the back door. But before he could reach it, glass shattered. The window exploded inward, sending shards flying across the room as the man shoved the crowbar through and began to climb in. Raphael spun, instinct taking over. "Stay!" he yelled. But she didn't hesitate. She scrambled to her feet, stumbling at first, then surging forward, teeth bared. It was the pure force of instinct and rage. Blind, battered, and bleeding, she attacked with ferocious resolve. The man had barely climbed through the window when she launched herself at his arm, clamping down with all her remaining strength. He screamed, swinging the crowbar wildly, trying to break free. Raphael rushed forward. "Drop it! Now!" he commanded. The man froze. The dog, still latched onto his arm, snarled with the fury of a warrior. "I said, drop it!" The crowbar fell with a heavy thud. Raphael seized the man and threw him to the floor, pinning him with his knee and pressing a gun to his neck. "You made a big mistake coming back here." Blood dripped from her mouth as she finally let go, panting and trembling, slumping against the wall, her ears still tuned to the cries of her pups in the corner. Raphael bound the man's hands with a zip tie and called the police on his satellite phone. "He broke into my home, tried to harm my dog. He has a history. Get here fast." They promised an immediate response. Raphael turned his attention back to the dog. She lay still, her chest rising and falling, blood on her muzzle and a gash on her leg. But she was alive. The puppies crawled toward her, and she lifted her head just enough to nudge them closer. "You saved us," Raphael whispered, kneeling beside her. She let out a soft, hoarse bark. Just one. The fight wasn't over, but tonight she had won. Outside, the distant wail of sirens began to cut through the silence. The police cruiser arrived shortly after dawn, its tires crunching on the gravel as two officers stepped out. Raphael stood on the porch, arms crossed, his jaw tight. The intruder was handcuffed on the ground, muttering curses, his sleeve blood-soaked and his wrist swelling. Inside the cabin, the dog remained weak but alive, her head resting protectively against her puppies. One of the officers approached Raphael. "We've had complaints about this guy before," he said. "Animal abuse, assault, but never enough evidence to make anything stick. You might have just changed that." "He won't be hurting her again," Raphael said, his voice firm. After giving his statement, he went back inside where the fire still glowed, and the scent of coffee and pine filled the air. Kneeling beside her, he stroked her fur. "You did so good, girl," he murmured. "You didn't just survive. You protected your family." The puppies snuggled closer, their tiny tails twitching. She let out a soft sigh, a sound of peace, of safety. That afternoon, Raphael took her back to the vet, this time to check for long-term damage and the possibility of restoring her sight. While the doctor examined her in a private room, Raphael waited, his mind racing. A few minutes later, the vet returned, this time with a microchip scanner in her hand. She has a chip, she explained. It's still active. I ran it through the national database and Rafael, this is no ordinary dog. Rafael stood up, startled. What do you mean? The vet handed him a printout. Her name is Solange. She served in an overseas K-9 unit. Honorably discharged after her handler, Lieutenant Samuel, was killed in action 2 years ago. She was sent back to the States, but she got lost in the system. No one ever followed up. Raphael stared at the paper. The name Samuel wasn't just a name. He recognized it. He'd met the man briefly during a training op in the Middle East. She was one of the best, the vet continued. When she came back, she should have gone into a retirement program or to the handler's family. But something went wrong. Raphael ran a hand over his face, emotion welling up inside him. Solange. Not just some stray. The name hit differently. Solange wasn't just a survivor. She was a hero. She had served, fought, and saved lives, and the system had failed her. He looked at the vet. Is there any chance for her eyesight? The vet hesitated. Cataract surgery could restore partial vision, but it's expensive and risky given her condition. With the right care, she can live a long, comfortable life. She just needs someone to fight for her now. Without hesitation, Raphael replied, Then I'll fight for her. That night, back at the cabin, Raphael held Solange's head gently in his hands. Even without sight, her ears followed every sound he made. Your name is Solange, he whispered. You've been through war, through hell, through abandonment, but that's over. This is your home now, and I don't care what it costs. I'm going to get you that surgery. You deserve to see your puppies. You deserve everything. Solange made a soft sound, as if in understanding, and for the first time in a long time, Raphael felt whole. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the ground in a pure white sheet. The world was quiet, healing, and inside Raphael's chest, a new sense of purpose was awakening, a feeling he hadn't known since the battlefield. He hadn't just saved Solange. She had saved him too. The next morning, Raphael sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open. The vet had given him the contact for a veterinary ophthalmologist. The surgery to restore Solange's sight was possible, but the cost was steep. Several $1,000s up front, not including travel and post-op care. Raphael sighed. He had some savings from his military benefits, but it wasn't nearly enough. He looked over at Solange, sleeping peacefully on the rug. Her puppies snuggled around her. She already looked better, her breathing more even. She was healing, and he couldn't let her down. Reluctantly, though he hated asking for help, he began to write a crowdfunding campaign. This wasn't about him. This was about a dog who had served, been abandoned, been beaten, and still found the strength to protect others. He wrote from the heart. She served our country, lost her partner, and lost her sight, but she still protected her puppies with every ounce of strength she had. Now she needs our help. Let's help Solange see the world again, because she never gave up on us. He published the campaign and leaned back watching the snow fall. Later, while gathering firewood, Raphael heard an approaching vehicle. It wasn't the police, just a black SUV that pulled to a stop at the edge of his property. Raphael tensed. A tall man in his 40s, broad-shouldered and wearing a military jacket with a faded emblem, stepped out. Sergeant Raphael? The man asked. That's me, Raphael replied. Who are you? The man extended his hand. My name is Captain Bruno. I served with Lieutenant Samuel, Solange's handler. Raphael was speechless. I saw your campaign, Bruno continued. A friend forwarded it to me this morning. I knew I had to come. Raphael shook his hand, still stunned. You knew her? I trained with her, Bruno said, his gaze drifting toward the cabin. I saw her take down her first target overseas. She was fearless, too loyal. When Samuel died, she changed, stopped eating. The higher-ups deemed her unfit for service. I tried to adopt her, but the red tape got in the way. Then, she just disappeared. She didn't disappear, Raphael said, his voice low. She was abandoned, abused, beaten blind. Bruno's face hardened. He led him inside. At the sight of Solange, Bruno's expression softened. He knelt, a sharp intake of breath. Solange, girl, it's me. Solange lifted her head, her ears twitching, her tail giving a slow, tentative wag, as if recognizing a familiar scent. That's right, Bruno murmured, his voice thick with emotion. You remember. Solange moved closer, nudging his hand with her muzzle and making a soft noise, not of fear or pain, but of recognition. I thought I'd lost you, he whispered. Raphael gave them a moment. Then Bruno stood, wiping at his eyes. I have resources, he said, pulling out his phone. Whatever you need for the surgery, it's covered. She saved lives. She gave everything. It's our turn now. Raphael hesitated. I don't know what to say. Just say you'll let me help, Bruno insisted. Say you'll let her have the life she deserves. Raphael nodded. We'll do the surgery, he declared firmly. That night, as the snow swirled thicker outside, Solange slept surrounded by warmth, love, and a hope she hadn't felt in a long, long time. Her future was no longer shrouded in darkness. It was just beginning to glow. Just as it seemed everything was settling into place, Raphael's phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. You think it's over. You think you've won. Watch your back, soldier. Raphael's smile vanished, his hand tightening around the phone. Not everyone was willing to let Solange go. The snow continued its silent descent as Raphael paced restlessly outside the surgical center. His hands were buried deep in his coat pockets, his breath pluming in the frigid air. Inside, behind heavy steel doors, Solange was in surgery. 2 hours had already passed. Captain Bruno sat quietly on a nearby bench, his gaze fixed on the doors. Raphael couldn't shake the message from his mind. Someone was still out there, watching. But that could wait. Nothing was more important than knowing if Solange would wake up, if she would ever see him again. When the veterinarian finally emerged, her mask lowered, her eyes weary but kind, she announced, "She made it. We have good news. The cataracts are gone. Her vision may not be perfect, but she will see again." Raphael let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, his eyes stinging. Captain Bruno rose to his feet. "When can we see her?" he asked. The doctor smiled. "Be gentle," she advised. "The light might be overwhelming for her at first." Later that night, Raphael stepped into the recovery room. Solange lay on a soft mat, wrapped in a blanket. She lifted her head slowly at the sound of his footsteps, For the first time, her eyes blinked open, no longer clouded, but clear, alert, and curious. Raphael knelt, whispering, "Hey, girl." She stared at him, not just reacting to his voice, but as if she were truly seeing him. Her tail gave a tentative wag, then another. Her ears perked up. Raphael's heart swelled as she slowly moved closer, pressing her face against his, as if she had known him all along. Back at the cabin, the puppies were growing stronger, playful and healthy. Captain Bruno helped build a proper enclosure and even offered to adopt one himself. Solange now moved through the house with a newfound confidence, no longer hiding or hesitating. But Raphael's work wasn't finished. With Bruno's help, he traced the threatening message to its source. It wasn't long before the man who had hurt Solange was arrested. This time he faced real charges, real consequences. He wouldn't be coming back. Winter thawed into a blooming spring. Solange would never return to the battlefield, but she had a new mission now. She watched over Raphael, her new family, and her pups. She was no longer a broken dog. She was a mother, a survivor, a living symbol of what it means to fight and to win. And Raphael? He was no longer alone. He had Solange, and she had him. Forever. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes in powerful tales of courage and redemption. Help us honor the loyalty of canine heroes like Solange, who continue to protect us long after the battle is over.